What
Yes.
do you make of this complaint from the U.S. steelmakers against their Chinese counterparts stealing the secrets and fixing the prices?
Well, we are all facing the one picture, that is the glut of the steel. And now when the world commodity price becomes so embarrassing to the industry makers, so everyone is trying to fight for a fair bowl of rice. And now, but the issue is, what is fair? Is pushing the government to set up high barriers against foreign imports a fair way of dealing that? So that is sort of excuse that created to protect its own inertia and the laziness to improve in technology and improve in efficiency.
If I could reinterpret what you just said, just to answer my question, if I can, is what you are saying seem to suggest all of those accusations against the Chinese steel makers are groundless from the U.S. side toward the Chinese side. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it is really ethically unfair because this also, by setting up protectionist measures, you're going to, in the end, harm the consumers.
Okay.
And also,
well, I still don't get a direct answer. So let me see if I could get a direct answer from Mr. Freeman. What do you think of this? Is this making excuses for not transforming its own industry? Or is this trade war likely to be seen for a long time?
Well, I think we should step back a second and remember that steel imports into the United States from China are less than about a half percentage point of all imports from China. So this is a very small part of U.S.-China trade. The reality is that China has had a glut and overcapacity for many, many years in steel, and you just don't have that kind of overcapacity without affecting global market prices downward. Is it protectionism in the U.S.? Of course it is. Of course it's an effort to try to protect U.S. steel companies from competition with foreign exporters. In some cases fairly, in some cases just because the industry is so loud.
How much does it have to do with the very special political season that we're in, Mr. Freeman, inside the United States? Of course, you've got the economy just recovering. Some would suggest quite stably progress. While at the same time, we got the presidential election. China, of course, is an easy target more and more, it seems.
Well, China is always a target during political seasons for one reason or another. Partly because I think many of our candidates just don't simply understand the way trade works. So China sometimes gets unfairly called out by politicians for trade practices. In steel, I think you have a legitimate concern with the amount of overcapacity that even Beijing has said for years it was trying to control, and for whatever reason, politically or otherwise, has not been able to reduce capacity in the Chinese steel market.
Mr. Freeman has a very humble attitude about the situation. It seems quite a liberal attitude toward some of the candidates for president, it seems. But what about from the Chinese side?
He's telling the truth.
Professor Liu, from the Chinese side, what actually has been the process for the Chinese side to work out its transformation of the steel industry, which, as Mr. Freeman just honestly suggested, has also been a very challenging process for China politically as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the battle. So actually China is fighting a battle at both fronts. And internationally, we're fighting for fair competition. And domestically, we are also fighting a battle against the excessive capacity. And because many of the state-owned firms are really dominating the Chinese steel industry, so the possible reduction of workforce may really send a trail into the job market, and that's something the government is very much concerned. So, but having said that, China really recognizes that there is excessive capacity around the world, and China is also most outstanding in this. And plus, the quality of the Chinese steel, both for domestic consumption and for export, is not there to compare with the upper class quality of the peers. So therefore, we need to reduce number one, the zombie enterprises, and also we need to reduce the production of low-quality steel.
But the question is, how efficiently can we do that? And how efficiently can other countries, other economies deal with that? The steel industry is quite a stubborn industry. It's been there for quite some time and has very loud and powerful voices politically. There is numbers coming from the UK, which also complain about China's imports of steel, suggesting that its pension system might be very much influenced by the deficit of those from the steel industry. So Mr. Freeman, of course, that's a case from Europe, but what about from the United States? 0.5% of the US trade with China only when it comes to steel, overall speaking. Why is it having such a strong voice? Can that voice be, in a way, reasonably contained so that it's not going to spill out of proportion, and the overall bilateral trade will not be necessarily poisoned as a result of that? Well,
any time that you've got core industries like steel or agriculture that are facing trade challenges, they tend to be more politically loud, as we've said, than others, and this is certainly the case in steel. In the U.S., every time there has been a major focus on trade, steel and the need to protect U.S. steel industry from foreign competition has always come up. It came up in the context of the Bush administration, the last Bush administration's efforts to pass trade law, and now we're coming at a time when Obama faces a very difficult political fight to pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership through the Congress. So doing something that suggests that the administration is going to get tough on core political issues of trade is certainly part of the calculation.
Very interesting over there, because we do have some numbers to support, it seems, even what you have just said, Mr. Freeman. According to the annual Global Trade Protection Report, the U.S. has overtaken India as the leading orchestrator of anti-dumping and other trade defense cases, with 33 anti-dumping cases in 2015 and a further 22 anti-subsidy investigations. Metal cases made up a record 46% of the 233 anti-dumping actions brought worldwide in 2015, almost all of which were in the steel industry. That is just a reality. Let's come back to you, Professor Liu. That's a reality. What can China do? The U.S. side was suggesting China's steel industry was violating the WTO rules. So can China figure out what exactly those rules are and whether Chinese ones are really violating them? Can Chinese also make use of the rest of the WTO rules to fight against the American complaints?
I think now a major uncertainty lies in the fact that China is not recognized the market economy so far. So hopefully by the end of the year, that's the 15 years of transition. So we smoothly get over that. But that's hopefully, but it's really unlikely.
It's tricky, isn't it? I mean, at the time when all sides signed on this WTO, China's access to WTO, this market economy status is a very interesting one. It was said by different sides that China should be a market economy by the end of this year. Right. Of course, different sides have different interpretations. So that's once again another thorny issue. Can we resolve this thorny issue by looking at a solution which is also a thorny issue?
No, I'm not really very optimistic about the automatic approval of market status, at least from the U.S. side, but there is also a mixed feeling over whether EU is going to smoothly approve. So because there is no really fixed writing over whether there's going to be a review or not. But the situation leads to the fact that both EU and the United States will lose a very important weapon. to retaliate the aggressive export of China. So therefore, I think they are reluctant to really give it up. But on the China side, yes, we do need to streamline the steel industry, given its proportion to the Chinese real estate development and infrastructure development, and also we need also to find more more diversified marketplace for our production, because we do enjoy price-wise the advantage.
Okay, Mr. Freeman, WTO rules, which part are we talking about? There are so many rules and so many possible agreements, different interpretations.
Well, I think there are questions of subsidies and others. I think the issue of market economy status is very interesting. Those of us that have a lot more gray in our hair than others remember when China joined the WTO that the question of market economy status may have actually been an automatic one. Many of us suspected that in the end of 2016 that China would automatically be granted market economy status under WTO rules. Certainly that's something that China can press in Geneva towards the end of the rule if it is not granted market economy status by fellow WTO members. But I do think that in this political age in particular, the question of market economy status is a political question, unless an economic or trade policy question. After all, the amount of anti-dumping duties that are applied to Chinese imports in the United States are a very infinitesimal amount of overall trade. They tend to be pretty politically significant, but not economically significant. So the question for the two governments in Washington and Beijing is whether they can overlook some of these politically incendiary, but not particularly economically significant or substantial trade policy tools.
But Mr. Freeman, do you think they will?
Will what? Will they grant market economy status?
No, will they be able to, the two governments, as you just suggested, to overcome some of those?
It's a very good question, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the two sides are really engaged on a level where they have political understanding between the two capitals. Most of the U.S. side, most of U.S. trade policy is aimed at trying to convince the Chinese bureaucracy to change Chinese practices. But as we've seen, increasingly, a lot of the economic and trade decisions are not made at a government level, but at a party level in Beijing. And so it's difficult for the two sides to come to agreement when they're really talking past each other.
It is not only what and where and how the decisions are being made, but also what has been the evolving role of trade and economic ties between China and the United States in the overall bilateral relations. Professor Liu, you and Mr. Freeman know this better than I do. I mean, it used to be the case that trade and economic ties are the very strong foundation for a ever moving forward relation between China and the U.S. And it seems that something have changed since Chinese economy has already become the second largest in the world. What can we expect the role of trade ties for future China-U.S. relations? What do you think, Professor?
I think both countries still enjoy a high level of reciprocity, across the industry, where China is moving from the low-end manufacturing more into the midstream manufacturing. So there is still a high level of compatibility, and also the U.S. consumers and the downstream. The industry really rely on the cheap and the reliable supply from China to make this to make the economy and make their recovery more stable.
All right, and Mr. Freeman, role of the trade ties between the two countries, overall the most important bilateral ties, what exactly is it?
Well, I think I agree completely with Professor Liu that the relationship is fundamentally sound, and it doesn't need to be over-politicized. Trade between the two countries and the economic relationship has really kept the overall U.S.-China relationship very positive for something like 25 years, as China has as China's economy has developed and Chinese industry is increasingly not just compatible with U.S. industry, but as it becomes more competitive, I think you're going to see increasing stress in the relationship. But let's be honest, we have a very mature relationship, but it's not even as mature as that between the U.S. and Europe, and we have trade frictions between the U.S. and Europe which make those between China and the United States look rather tame. So I think cooler heads should prevail in this. I'm not sure when you have some of the rhetoric coming out of the political campaigns in the United States, which is very anti-China and somewhat ignorant about the way trade work, candidly. I'm not sure that this side will be the one, that the U.S. side is the one that will be politically mature enough to manage the relationship by making sure the economic relationship works.